Hello there. With the total uproar and volatility surrounding the energy markets right now, you'd think the government would be very careful about committing to new net zero measures, wouldn't you? Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. Ready for more doubling down on net zero? Well, like it or not, here it comes. The ban on new natural gas only boilers for replacing old boilers is due to come into force in 2035. Or should I say, was due to come into force in 2035. The government has proposals to bring that forward 9 years to 2026. And as we're on the verge of 2023, that's just 3 years away. And this applies to putting new boilers in old houses, not the gas boiler ban on new houses from 2025. That's different. From 2026 onwards, all boilers sold would need to be able to run on hydrogen as well as natural gas, because the plan is to replace the gas pipes with hydrogen pipes, at great expense, obviously. Now, hydrogen has been touted as the great net zero saviour, until you dig around a bit. To be viable as a bulk source, hydrogen can be extracted from either fossil fuels, normally natural gas, but you still need to carry out gas exploration and drill for more natural gas to supply it. Or you can extract it from water using electrolysis. You probably did that experiment at school. The trouble is that it takes about 20% more energy to make hydrogen that way than you get from eventually burning it. Although I have read that a new process could reduce that to as low as 5% more energy. However, it still takes more electrical energy to make hydrogen through electrolysis than you get back. Now, like society, what would modern science be without rainbows? So we have a rainbow of colours to describe the different types of hydrogen out there. Now, the hydrogen gas itself is always the same, but the colour denotes how the gas was extracted, and here we go. Grey hydrogen is derived from natural gas, but the waste CO2 is just released into the atmosphere. Blue hydrogen is derived from natural gas, but the waste carbon is captured and stored. Green hydrogen is derived from water using electrolysis from a renewable power source. Pink hydrogen comes from electrolysis using only nuclear power. Yellow hydrogen comes from electrolysis using just solar power. And it seems that the overall idea is to get from grey hydrogen through blue hydrogen to green hydrogen. So with green hydrogen, we'll be putting more energy into the system than we get back. Does that sound like a plan to you? Well, it's a government net zero plan anyway. All great for these new boilers and the engineers that will have to fit them. And come round to your house to tinker with the boiler when they switch from natural gas over to hydrogen. A bit like the late 1990s, when the TV engineers went to every house in the land to retune their old tellies to receive the newfangled Channel 5 UHF signal. But if it takes more electrical power to make the hydrogen in the first place, what's the point? Oh, and one other point that not many are acknowledging here is, what about our gas cookers and hobs? Well, those living in Whitby, Elmsmere Port or in Redcar in Teesside may be about to find out. Because once the choice is made, the residents of one of those communities will soon be undergoing almost enforced trials on using hydrogen for domestic use. And some residents are unhappy that their homes have effectively been requisitioned for the trial and are concerned about the safety implications, reports The Telegraph. They feel dumped on. with proposed laws to give gas distributors the power to enter homes of refuseniks and switch them over. A sign of things to come to enforce the whole net zero agenda, maybe. And the chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, Tory MP Craig McKinley, called this a potential greenwashing exercise, while pointing out the nonsense of putting in more energy than you get out and the resulting pressure on the national grid. How much more of this nonsense has the UK taxpayer got to put up with, and worse, pay for? Now, don't be fooled by a slight easing in the inflation rate figures. In reality, prices are still rocketing up. With inflation really biting and bills going ever higher, tens of thousands of early retirees are getting back into work. They are unretiring due to the cost of living crisis. And this will be welcome news to the government that was hoping that those who retired during the pandemic and became economically inactive would return to the workforce and fill in all those vacancies we've got. Although the numbers of these unretirees is in the tens of thousands, analysts put the total number at about 300,000 recent early retirees that the economy would benefit from if they re-entered the workforce. But I would point out that might not be necessary if we were to crack down on this ridiculous position where some people can work 16 hours a week and have their very low pay topped up to 40 plus grand a year by the taxpayer, and in the process earning far more than some who are beavering away in full-time employment, something I talked about a few days ago. Anyway, in truth, probably the only reason there are people unretiring is because they couldn't in their wildest dreams have imagined a prolonged period of double-digit inflation, so why would they have factored that into their early retirement plans? And that may be a lesson for us all. Now, inflation has dropped a little from its peak of 11.1% in October down to 10.7% in November, and some are asking if the worst is now behind us. But to be blunt, that's like being in a car travelling at 100 miles per hour towards a cliff edge and being thankful we slowed down to 99 miles per hour. We're still headed towards the cliff edge at a breakneck speed. And despite what the Ramonas might want you to believe, the EU has it no better either. In the euro area, inflation is running at 10% for November, and it is expected to be at this level for the whole of the EU when the figures come in. And the estimate for Germany is 11.3%, for example. Now, there is talk from the experts that UK inflation will get back towards 5%, give or take, next year. But even that's over twice the government target of 2%, and we might hit 2% by 2025 or so. But unless you have received a set of pay rises that matches inflation or are promised a catch-up set of rises further down the line, then you will be permanently worse off. And some people don't realise that. They may think that somehow a decrease in how fast inflation is going up somehow helps them. But it doesn't, because the costs are still going up. Take a look at this graph I knocked together. Now, many will say this is obvious, but some may not realise it. Now, I've chosen the figures for illustrative purposes only. The green line is a £30,000 a year income, increasing by the government's inflation target of 2% every year. The blue line is the annual living costs, increasing by 2% inflation every year. And following the green and blue lines, you can see everything is comfortable, with costs always leaving a nice level of disposable income. However, when you include a spike of 10% inflation in 2022, reducing back to 2% per year by 2024, you can see that your pay is unaffected, but your costs are permanently higher, leaving you with a much reduced level of disposable income forever. Now look at the amber dotted line for someone on a lower income with comparable costs. Once the inflation spike hits, you're in trouble. But not for a couple of years, but permanently, unless you lower your costs and do without heating or eating, for example, or get a big pay rise. But you're doing the same job. So even if the inflation rate is falling, if it is above 2% and you only get 2% pay increases every year, then it is still eating further into your wages with increasing costs permanently. Sorry if I'm teaching some people to suck eggs, but there are some out there who don't fully understand the permanent damage a spike in inflation can do to their life going forwards. It also does the same thing to any savings you may have. And it is these sorts of events that both government and employers rely on to hide long-term wage erosion. Now, I'm not saying all the strikes are justified because of this, but surely a better mechanism to ensure over a 5 or 10 year period employees aren't shafted can be devised. So when people are bandying these large inflation figures about over a long period, your wages and or savings are being seriously eroded away. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.